Hey, good day. Michael Didier here. Thank you for joining us. Last week we finished 14 and we did 15 of Numbers. I want to remind you of what we did even the week before that. And the first question that I have goes like this. The assembly of Israel's seed complained. They said, if only we had died in Egypt's land, or if only we had died in the wilderness. Why has Yehovah brought us to this land to fall by the sword that our something and something should be victims? Who is the something and something should be victims? Well, you probably figured it out already because it's right here. Our women and our children. Who are their wives? But are all their women their wives? Remember, they can have wives as well as, what do we call those? Pelagashim are the concubine. But is a servant woman a woman? Maybe, I would think. Is it their woman? I think there's a broader understanding to this than sometimes we think. Maybe it is wives, but it doesn't say wives. It says women, our women and our taf. The point I want you to see, though, is we're talking to who? The assembly of Israel's seed. They're concerned about their women and their children, not their husbands and their children. We're talking about Israel. So often we forget this. And I like to find verses like this that kind of help us to identify who they are. I think that's coming up very shortly. Let me go to my next question. Yehovah wants to destroy the people, but Moses interceded for them. He says this, then Yehovah said, I have pardoned them. How? Why has he pardoned them? Maybe this is a little too vague for you, but it goes like this. I have pardoned them according to your words, Moses. He was going to kill them. I'll make a nation that will follow me from your seed. Moses fell on his face, remember? And then Yehovah said, I will pardon them according to your word. Wow, that's pretty amazing. He continues saying, as I live, the whole earth will be filled with the something, something, something. Do you remember what it was? It hasn't happened yet, I don't think. The whole earth is going to be filled with something. What is the something? Here it is. It's in verse 21. The whole earth shall be filled with the glory of Yehovah. The glory of Yehovah. What is the glory of Yehovah? And what is it going to look like when the whole earth is filled with the glory of Yehovah? You know, I think we have to understand first what the glory is. The next verse helps us see it. Look what it says. Because all these men, who have seen my glory and the signs which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have put me to the test these 10 times. My glory, the glory is the kavod, the weight, the heaviness, the copiousness. Most describe it as gloriousness. My glory. What is his glory that they saw? It's the pillars of fire and smoke. When is it going to look like? What is it going to look like when the whole earth is filled with pillars of fire and smoke? I think when it happens, we're going to have it done in such a way. Yehovah said, promised that he would raise up Israel a second time. No longer will they say, great is Yehovah who brought Israel's seed out of the land of Egypt. But great is Yehovah who brought Israel's seed out of the north and all the places that he scattered them. What is it going to look like when we see a pillar of fire and smoke somewhere in our neck of the woods? Everybody's going to be able to walk to it, because it's likely by then that we will have seen the whole earth shaken. There may not be cars anymore. Well, we'll see how exactly that flows. Maybe the earth will be shaken before the glory of Yehovah is shown. His shalakim are set up in the world. Men, just like Moses, that will see eye to eye when Yehovah raises up Zion, it says in Isaiah 52. It's going to be amazing, and this is a promise. As I live, all the earth shall be filled with the glory of Yehovah. That's the goal that Yehovah has in mind. Hasn't happened yet, but it's going to happen. Yehovah always fulfills his word. Israel didn't think they were going to fulfill his word, or that he'd fulfill his word. Here, is this the one down here? Here's the second time that he says this. As I live. Yeah. Say to them, as I live, says Yehovah. This is verse 28. Just as you have spoken in my hearing, so will I do to you. What was it that they said? We just read it, the first question. If only we had died in Egypt's land, or if only we had died in the wilderness. You want it? You got it. Why has Yehovah brought us out to fall by the sword, that our women and children should be victims? You're going to be victims. Let it be done according to your word, as I live. Don't make the second mistake. Know that Yehovah says that he is going to fill the whole earth with his glory. Will it happen during our lifetime? I don't know. I hope so. There's been a lot of people like me, probably, hoping that it would happen during their lifetime, then it hasn't. But you know what? I'm going to bet my life that it will. I may be wrong, but I'd rather trust Yehovah that he's going to fulfill his word. Here's the next question. Yehovah's judgment was that all Israel would die in the wilderness. Once we just read that, right? The very first thing is we're going to see the 10 people the 10 spies who gave a bad report are going to perish. Here it is in verse 37. Those very men who brought the evil report about the land died by plague before Yehovah. These are the people who are rejecting Yehovah's words. These are the people who are complaining against him. Well, right after he killed those guys, the very next morning, what had happened? We saw the whole Israel complained again. Do these guys not learn? Some of them went up. Remember, he told them, go south. Go to the wilderness of Paran. You're not going into the promised land. You're all going to die. Your carcasses are going to fall in the next 40 years. Oh, we don't want that to happen. Well, he already said it's going to happen. He's not going to change his mind. So what do? They went to the land of the Amorites and the Canaanites. They went up into the mountains, and they got driven back as far as Hormah. Look at this. Here's where we were in Kadesh Barnea. Some of us, were stupid enough, didn't follow Yehovah again. We went to up in here, the land of the, I said Amorites, Amalekites. I'm surprised there's Amalekites in here. Most of the Amalekites, I would think, would be down here, but they're saying the Amalekites are here as well. Amalekites and Canaanites. Here's Hebron. Here's where the giants are at. We went up into these mountains, and we got driven back as far as Hormah. The ark didn't go with us. Moses didn't go with us. I'd say us. I'm pretending I'm the rebellious one, going to be slain by the sword. Not everybody died by the sword. Most of them are going to die in the wilderness. But we're going to see we're not done. We saw 10 men die. Then we saw all these men die. But the complaining is still going on, and that's where we're going to pick up today. But before we do that, I want to go through a couple things on chapter 16. So let's go there. Here it is. 15. I'm sorry, not 15. We're starting 16 this morning. We talked about 4 things in 15. The first one was how we are to do our Olah and our Shalamim Korban. We always call them the burnt offering and the peace offering. It's an Olah. It's a Shalamim. The Olah gets burned up completely. The Shalamim we eat. But both of us are designed to bring us closer to Yehovah. That's why they're called Korban. It's about drawing near to Yehovah. Then we talked about the first fruits. The first fruits of our land are to be given to Yehovah. We saw all the things that are going to be, actually, we're going to see it today very clearly. All the things that are given to Yehovah are going to be given to his priests, his representatives on the earth. The big brouhaha that we're going to see today is all about Korah and some men of Reuben thinking that they're priests, that they can do the same things that the priests can do. Don't make that mistake. It's a bad mistake. Next, we talked about unintentional sins, the sins that we do out of ignorance and by accidents, versus presumptuous sins. Ooh, there's a big difference between presumptuous sins and unintentional sins. We all do unintentional sins. We're learning Yehovah's ways, his statutes, his judgments, his ordinances. And in that learning process, we fail. We don't know it yet. That's why Paul gave us those 5 things. Don't eat meat sacrificed to idols. Well, don't eat meat sacrificed to idols. That's a whole big another thing. But we're talking about eating the blood. We're talking about, what were some of the other things that we said? Keeping the Sabbath. No eating blood, no eating things strangled, and sexual immorality. All the things in Leviticus 18. All those things were very important because they were things that got you cut off from Israel. Don't want to get cut off from Israel. But sexual immorality, we got to understand better what sexual immorality is. We don't get it. And chapter 18 helps us understand what sexual immorality is. We in our Christians' understandings have perverted ideas. The last thing, I want to just talk about these presumptuous sins. Look at this verse here. This is 30. He says, but the person who does anything presumptuously, here's the word presumptuously is what it says in the Hebrew. The person, and the nefesh, who acts in open betrayal. Hear that? Presumptuously is to act in open betrayal. We know what is right, but we choose to do what is wrong. Remember, there's things that we do that we shouldn't, and things that we should do that we don't. They're both open betrayal to Yehovah. What does it say? Whether he is native born, an Ezra man, Israel's seed, or the ger. That's where it says the ger. Gets translated as the stranger, the alien, the foreigner. You hardly know. We're talking about the native born and the stranger who dwells with them. That one brings Yehovah reproach. We're talking about men. Your women bring the sin on you, which brings the sin on Yehovah, which is the reproach to Yehovah. That's why you can't keep a woman who won't follow you with you. She's bringing sin on you, and thus bringing reproach on Yehovah. Can't have that. The last thing that we talked about, and I had a question regarding that. What was my question? Here it is right here. Yehovah told a group of people to wear tzitzi. Who was the group, and why did he tell us to wear them? Who is supposed to wear tzitzi, and why do we wear them? There's two reasons, not one, for why this group wears tzitzi. Remember, we were just talking about Israel's seed, bringing reproach on Yehovah, not their women. There's a hint there. Here's what it says. Speak to Israel's seed. Tell them to make tassels on the corners of their garments throughout their generations. This is not talking to the Ger who dwells with them. It's talking to Israel's seed. Put corners on your garments throughout your generations, and put a blue thread in the tassel of the corners. And you shall have the tassel, that you may look upon it and remember all the commandments of Yehovah. That's the first one. So the answer, who, is Israel's seed. The first reason as to why we wear them is to remember all, what does it say? Remember all the commandments of Yehovah and do them. But everybody misses the second one. It says, and that you may not follow the harlotry to which your own heart and your own eyes are inclined. That you remember to do all my commandments and be holy to Yehovah. I am Yehovah, your Elohim. Your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your Elohim. I am Yehovah, your Elohim. We only serve one Elohim. Serving more than one Elohim is the harlotry to which our own hearts and our own eyes are inclined. Don't follow the harlotry. Ooh, you know what? That is hard to do. We have been trained from birth to be harlots. Look what it says, Isaiah 54, I think. 47. Try that. Isaiah 47. He says, come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. That's what I was. I was a virgin daughter of Babylon. O daughter of the Chaldees. Hear that? Virgin daughter of Babylon. I've always been theirs, and I've always served them faithfully. I ran as a precinct committee man at one point and won in my district. I was elected as one of the Elohim of the land, one of the representatives of the land. Father, I'm sorry. I didn't know. Seemed right at the time, but what do I know? My heart was inclined toward harlotry. That's all I knew. I was a virgin daughter. But what does he say? Look what it says, Isaiah 52. Awake, awake! Put on your strength, O Zion, a people. Put on your beautiful garments, the garments of righteousness. O Yerushalayim, the holy city. People, 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 not a place. For the uncircumcised and the unclean shall no longer come to you. Shake yourself from the dust. Arise, sit down, O Jerusalem. He's saying, arise, sit down on your throne. Have to understand what we were just talking about in the last verse to understand this verse. Here it is. Sit on the ground without a throne, O daughter of the Chaldees. Oh, my goodness, the things that we do in ignorance. Okay, that's 16 or 15. Let's go to 16. Here it is. Now Korah, the son of Itzkar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi. So here we have Korah ben Itzar ben Kohath ben Levi. This man is a Levite. With Dathan and Abiram, sons of Eliav, and On. We always forget about On. Apparently On didn't die. I think On repented. Left Dathan and Abiram. With Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, Dathan and Abiram, Benim Eliav, and On ben Paluth, Benim of Reuben. These are sons of Reuben. Dathan, Abiram, and Paluth, and On. All sons of Reuben. Isn't that interesting? First, let's talk about Korah. Korah was a Levite, son of Kohath. Let's understand who it is that we're talking about. This is important that we understand this. Korah was Moses' cousin. Here's Itzhar. The sons of Kohath, remember we're talking about Itzhar, son of Kohath. Sons of Kohath were Amram. Amram was the father of Moses and Aaron, the father of Yocheved. So Kohath, the sons of Kohath, were Amram, Itzhar, Hebron, Uzziel. Now, here it says, and Levi's sons, Levi's seed, were Gershom, Kohath, Merari, and their sister, and Yocheved, their sister. I think it's interesting that these men of Kohath, they're the Kohathites, led by Korah, are with sons of Reuben. I played the hunch, and I saw this, and I thought it was interesting, and I thought I'd share it with you. Look at who they camp with. Here's the Kohathites. Remember, the Levites surround the residence of Yehovah, Yehovah's Mishkan. That's the tabernacle. The Kohathites are on the south side with who? Reuben, Simeon, and Gad. Remember, Reuben is the ones who are leading those three tribes. They're under the banner of Reuben. Isn't that interesting that they're having, what would you call it, rebellious thoughts with some of the Kohathites, Korah in particular? They all camp in proximity to one another. I thought that was interesting. Let's go back. It says, and they rose up before Moses with some of Israel's seed, 200 princes. Here it is. Some of Israel's assembly. No. They came before Moses. What is this? And came before Moses, and men from Israel's seeds assembly. They've rewritten this, not according to what the Hebrew actually says. From Israel's seeds assembly, princes selected by appointment. Selected by appointment, princes. This is the Nasi. Selected by appointment. We're talking about Moed. Selected by appointment. These men seem to be elected, appointed by the people. It says men of Shem. Men of Shem, men of position, men of authority, men of honor. You know what? We have what seems like honorable men among us. But how many of these men are men, just like the spies, that are going to lead us in a way that we should not go? Listen to what these men, these princes are saying. I wonder how many of these princes are Kohathites, Levites, son Kohathites, Ben Levi. The destruction is going to happen on this side of the tent, the south side of the tent, it looks to me. Let's take a look. It says, they gathered together against Moses and Aaron and said to them, listen to what they say, you take too much upon yourselves. Don't you know? All the assembly is holy. Hear that? They're saying all the assembly is holy. Kodesh. Remember, it's the priests that handle the Kodesh things. It's the priests who were sanctified by Yehovah for 7 days. On the 8th day, we raised the tabernacle, dedicated the altar, and the presence of Yehovah appeared before us. But here they are saying the whole congregation is holy. Oh, peace, peace, when there is no peace. People want to hear how holy they are. Don't you know the whole I'm going to hear them speaking for the congregation in front of the congregation. Can Yehovah have this happening? They're questioning the authority of Moses and Aaron. This is yet another act of rebellion by the same men who were complaining, saying we should have died in the wilderness. The same men who he says are going to die in the next 40 years. The 10 died. Then the people who went up to the mountain who weren't supposed to, they died by the sword of the Amalekites and the Canaanites. Now what's going to happen? Look. They gathered together against Moses and Aaron and said to them, you take too much upon yourselves, for all the assembly is holy. Is all the assembly holy? Every one of them. And Yehovah is among us. Why then do you exalt yourself above Yehovah's assembly? Yehovah's assembly. You know, there's nuances of the word that we have got to understand. Yeah, they're Yehovah's assembly. But does that mean that they have the same duties and responsibilities that Aaron and his sons have, that Moses has before Yehovah? See, we miss that. We don't look at the nuances of the words. We read the children of Israel and we're lost. I could be a little more coarse, but we're lost because we lack understanding. We lack the nuances of the word. And these men don't get it. How many people have to die before these men start to get it? Well, these men aren't going to live because they're rebellious before Yehovah. They don't want to submit to Aaron and Moses' authority. So when Moses heard it, he fell on his face. Yes, he understands. Oh, Yehovah, they're doing it again. Here's 14. We were just talking about doing the same thing, and Moses fell on his face. We just read it. This is how we started our class, talking about this. Oh, that we had died in the land of Egypt, Egypt's land. Or that we had died in the wilderness. That our women and children should be victims. He's fallen on his face again. And he spoke to Korah and all his company, saying, tomorrow morning, Yehovah will show who is his and who is holy, and will cause him to come near to him, that one whom he chooses. He will cause to come near him. Hear this? Korah and those people who are with him think that they're as holy as Aaron is, as Moses is. Moses says, do this, Korah, all who are with you, Korah and all your company, take censers, put fire in them and put incense in them before Yehovah tomorrow. Well, there's a death sentence looming on them. And it shall be that the man whom Yehovah chooses is holy, is the Holy One. You take too much on yourselves, you seed of Levi. I guess we could say it like that. But that's what we're talking about, seed of Levi. Isn't it interesting? He's talking to the Levites, not the Reubenites. Is the sin greater for the Levites than it is for the Reubenites? I wonder. Aaron and Miriam sinned in questioning Moses' authority. It was Miriam who got the worst of there's a horse walking past our window by himself. It was Miriam who got the worst of the punishment. Oh, there's Mom. Now he's talking to the Levites, not the Reubenites. He says, hear now, again talking to Korah, hear now, you son of Levi, you B'nai of Levi. This is B'nai again. Shows you B'nai can be one or it can be many. You B'nai of Levi. Yeah, before I go on to 8, let me finish this. It says, put fire in them and put incense. Who makes the fire? Where does the fire come from that we're going to have in our censer when we come before Yehovah? Does the fire just come from any place? Or does the fire come from the gold altar? That's where it looks like it comes from me. Or maybe, I tend to think it comes from the golden altar, but I don't know if there's a fire burning in there all the time. It may come from the brass altar. But not just anybody goes to the brass altar, because you die if you're anybody but a priest coming to the brass altar. But we got a couple issues here. One is where the fire is going to come from, and two, where is the incense going to come from? Let's talk about that for a moment. Here's my note. It says, and Aaron and his seed went through a 7-day sanctification. His sons went through a 7-day sanctification process. We talked about that. Korah is a Kohathite, not a son of Aaron. Kohath's dad was Aaron's dad. Goeth's dad and Aaron's dad were brothers, so they're cousins. All right. I put not just anyone can manufacture the incense that is burned before Yehovah. Look at what it says. And Yehovah said to Moses, this is back in 30 of Exodus, take sweet spices, 4 different components, and with these sweet spices, there will be equal amounts of each. You shall make of these an incense, a compound according to the art of the perfumer, salted, pure, and holy. But look at what it says. And you shall beat them. Who's he talking to? Yehovah said to Moses. Okay, not just anybody manufactures this incense. I'm guessing it's the priest that's going to do it. Moses is going to tell the priest to do it. But it's Moses who's got the responsibility for it. He says, and you shall beat some of it, and you shall beat some of it very fine, and put some of it before the testimony of the tent of meeting where I will meet with you. It shall be most holy to you. That's where it's going to be the incense that we're going to burn to Yehovah. Where are these guys going to get it? They can't go into the tent. But as for the incense which you shall make, you shall not make any for yourselves according to its composition. It shall be to you holy to Yehovah. Look what it says. Whoever makes anything like or makes any like it to smell it, he shall be cut off from his people. These men have already been taught this. They're not supposed to manufacture the incense. So where are they going to get the incense that they're going to burn? Well, it's no wonder they're going to be destroyed. Even Aaron's two sons. I'm forgetting their names right now. Died for bringing strange fire before Yehovah. Coming to him when he didn't tell them to come. They were priests, sanctified by Yehovah. The day that they finished their sanctification process, no more, no less. These 250 men are going to come before Yehovah. How presumptuous can we get? Now, he says, then Moses said to Korah, hear now, you Levi seed. Is it a small thing that Israel Elohim has separated you from among Israel's assembly? Israel's Elohim, not the Elohim of anybody else. He took the Levites and separated them from Israel's assembly. Let them draw nearer to him than anybody else. But they want to be priests. They want more. To bring you near to himself, to do the work of Yehovah's residence. Yehovah's Mishkan is what it says, his residence. And that he brought you near to himself, you and all your brethren. He's talking to Korah. You and all your brethren, all the priests, all the Levites, they're all brethren, they're all men. Levi's seed with you. And are you seeking the priesthood? Are you seeking the priesthood? This is a true problem. Korah wants to do something that is against Yehovah's plan. He's overstepping his boundaries. This is what Miriam did last week. 2 weeks ago, actually. Yeah. Overstepping your boundaries. Understand what your function and position is in life. Maybe I should say your position and your function is in life. And learn to operate within that structure. Remember, it was Moses who called Yehovah Adonai. It was Aaron who called Moses Adonai, and all the men of Israel called Moses Adonai. Until they start getting presumptuous, thinking that there's something that they're not. We have a lot of women today thinking they're men, and that they have the same duties and responsibilities that a man has. Don't go there. Are you seeking the priesthood also? But look what Moses, Yehovah's mouth says in the very next verse. Here it is. Therefore you and all your company are gathered against Yehovah. You think you're gathering against Moses and Aaron, but you're gathering against Yehovah. And what is Aaron that you complain against him? And Moses sent to call Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab. But they said, we will not come. Isn't that funny? Here's the men who are complaining, He calls them to himself. Korah came. But now he's calling to those guys, the sons of Eliab, Dathan and Abiram. But they said, we will not come up. He says, is it a small thing that you have brought us? No, maybe it's them saying it. Is it a small thing that thou, has brought us up out of the land flowing with milk? Look at this. Oh my goodness. Oh, what are they saying? I didn't see this before. Is it a small thing that thou has brought us up out of a land flowing with milk and honey? They're calling Egypt the land of milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness, and that thou should keep acting like a prince over us. Do you hear the rebellion? These are men who have seen the glory of Yehovah working for them. They saw Moses put his staff in the Red Sea and saw the Red Sea split. They saw Moses take his staff and split the rock at Horeb. And yet they're saying something as this. Is it a small thing that you have brought us out of a land flowing with milk and honey? Oh my goodness. Such rebellion before these men. I guess I did see it. Oh, they're calling Egypt the land flowing with milk and honey. What does this say? Then he said, who made you prince and judge over us? This is Exodus 2. This is when we were back in Egypt. This is how we were talking. These men haven't changed. Do you intend to kill me as you killed the Egyptian? So Moses feared and said, surely this thing is known. Moreover, you have not brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, nor given us inheritance, or fields, or vineyards. Why not? Because they're rebellious before Yehovah and they won't listen to him. I put, you disobey Yehovah Shalak, you disobey Yehovah. What does he say? Nor given us the inheritance of the fields and vineyards. Will thou put out the eyes of these men? We will not come up. This is Dathan and Abiram. Now, On's not saying anything anymore. They never mention On again. Did On just simply decide, this is not the fight I want to be in? Maybe he was following the crowd for a while and he just got smarter. Then Moses was very angry and said to Yehovah, do not respect their offering. Remember, they're bringing their korban, the sweet aroma in the form of the incense in their censers before Yehovah, before his face. I have not taken one donkey from them, nor have I hurt one of them. He says, I have not even taken an unclean animal from them. Donkey, that's an unclean animal, remember. What does this say? This is, here I am, witness against me before Yehovah and before his anointed. Whose donkey have I taken? Or whose ox have I taken? Or whom have I cheated? Sound familiar? Whom have I oppressed? I have not hurt them. Or from whose hand have I received any bribe? With which to blind my eyes, I will restore it to you. Yeah, he's saying, I haven't done it. He says, do not respect their offering. Their offering is what they are bringing in their censer. And Moses said to Korah, tomorrow you and all your company may be present before Yehovah, thou and they. Moses said to Korah, tomorrow thou and all thy company will be present before Yehovah's face. Thou and they, as well as Aaron. Let each take a censer and put incense in it. And each of you bring his censer before Yehovah's face. 250 censers. Oh, I did spell it right. Both you and Aaron, each with his censer. Both thou and Aaron, each with his censer. So every man took his censer, put fire in it, laid incense on it, and stood at the door of the tent of meeting. Every man, these are not ladies, these are men, it's always men, stood at the door of the tent of meeting with Moses and Aaron. Here we are before Yehovah. This is next to the brass altar. This is where we're talking about before Yehovah. It's where we slaughter our animals. Give it to the priest to put on the altar. This is where these men are standing. Now it says, and Korah gathered all the congregation against them. All the assembly, all Israel's assemblies who we're talking about, against them. You take too much on yourself. What are they saying? We're all holy. Don't you know all the assembly of Israel is holy? Are they? See, those kind of words stir people up. They want to be holy. Those are peace, peace, when there is no peace kind of words. It's stirring people up. But Yehovah has already sanctified Aaron. He set Moses apart as his shalach. These men are being presumptuous. Korah gathered all the assembly against them at the door of the tent of meeting. Then the glory of Yehovah appeared to all the assembly. What's appearing? The glory, the fire, probably smoke. It's daytime. The smoke is coming up before the altar. The glory of Yehovah appeared in all the assembly. And Yehovah spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, how did they speak? Did the congregation of the assembly hear them? And Yehovah spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, separate yourselves from among this assembly. Moses and Aaron, back up. You don't want to be a part of this, that I may consume them in a moment. Look at this. Now, let me see my notes. Remember, these 250 men are respected leaders, princes of the assembly, but Yehovah is getting ready to take out all of Israel's seed who are there. The assembly. They fall on their faces. You know what? My flesh would say, get them, Father. But Moses and Aaron have a different spirit. They don't want to see him perish. They want to see him repent. This is ha-ish. It says, then they fell on their faces and said, oh, Elohim, Elohim of spirits, of the spirit of all flesh. Shall one man sin and you be angry with all the assembly? Moses is pleading for the assembly's deliverance. He thinks Korah is the one that needs to die. But these men have their censers. They have their incense. They got their fire. What did he say? You're going to be cut off from Israel. He's got to fulfill his word. So Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the assembly, saying, "Get away from the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram." I put, now anyone who does not do what Moses says is going to be killed. This is not Ohel, this is Mishkan, Korah's residence. Get away from the residence of, residence. Does Korah's residence involve or include multiple tents? I think it would have to. Korah's residence, Dathan's and Abiram's residence. Interesting that they don't use tents there, Ohel or Ohalim. Then Moses rose and went to Dathan and Abiram, and the elders followed them. And he spoke to the assembly, saying, "Depart from the tents of these wicked men. Touch nothing of theirs, lest you be consumed in all their sins." So they got away from around Korah and Dathan and Abiram's Mishkan. And Dathan and Abiram came out and stood at the door of their tents, their Mishkan, with their women and their sons and their tough. It says little ones, it's tough, they're children. And he said, here, women, Nashim, their women, their sons, and the tough of them, the children of them. That's what it says. And Moses said, "By this you shall know that Yehovah has sent me to do all these works, for I have not done them of my own will. Yehovah has sent me." Here's the word, shalak. Shalak. Yehovah has sent me. That's what he's saying. To do the work. If these men die naturally, like all men. Oh, you know what? Look at this. This is Moses taking it upon himself. Yehovah doesn't seem to be telling him to do this right now. Look at what he says. And Moses said, "By this you shall know that Yehovah has shalak me to do these works, for I have not done them on my own will." Looks to me like Moses is saying, watch what's going to happen. If these men die naturally, I'm a liar. But if these men die the way I'm going to say, then Yehovah has sent me. Look what he says. Did Yehovah tell Moses about the ground opening up? Or did Moses say this on his own? I think he did. He said it on his own. Or will we learn from this demonstration? Yeah, will we learn? If these men die naturally like all men, or if they are visited by the common fate of all men, then Yehovah has not sent me. But if Yehovah creates a new thing, and the earth opens up his mouth and swallows them up with all that belong to them, and they go down alive into the pit, then you will know and understand that these men have rejected Yehovah. Which men are we talking about? Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Here's the ground opening up and swallowing these. We're talking like a sinkhole. Can you imagine what that must be like to see this happen? When are these men, these people, going to understand who Yehovah is, what he says is true, and follow the leaders that he has placed over them? It's going to happen a second time. when Yehovah raises up his shalakim in the earth. It's going to happen again. Now it came to pass, as he finished speaking all these words, that the ground split apart under them, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up with their households, and all the men with Korah, with all their goods, with their households, and all the men with Korah, with all their goods. All the men with Korah. Are these all the men of his households? Or are these all the men who are following him? Not the 250, because they're going to die separate. Remember, these people are dying. They're going down into the earth alive. So they and all those with them went down alive into the pit. And the earth closed over them, and they perished from among the assembly. Did the hole fill itself back up? That's what it seems like, isn't it? Then all Israel who were around them fled at their cry, and they said, lest the earth swallow up us also. Boy, there's a visual thing. So how many people died there? We had the 10 spies that died. Then we had the men that went up to the mountain. Now we've got these guys who died with their women, with their children. How many men died? And now it says, and a fire came down from Yehovah and consumed the 250 men who were offering incense, who were bringing incense. But Yehovah's not done yet. Now 250 princes of Israel's seed die, just like Nadab and Abihu. There they are, Nadab and Abihu, the two eldest sons of Aaron. Then Nadab and Abihu, Aaron's sons, each took his censer and put fire in it, put incense in it, and offered profane fire before Yehovah. Moses knew this was going to happen, which he had not commanded them. So the fire went out from Yehovah and devoured them. These men had to know that happened, and they died before Yehovah. At this point in time, all the spies have died except Joshua and Caleb. Then some of the men who disobeyed Yehovah by going up to fight the Amalekites and the Canaanites in the mountains, Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, and their families, and now the 250 leaders. But these are all the first and the worst to die in the next 40 years. You know what? I think this is what's happening. There's some righteous men in Israel's seed. They're going to live a good long life. They're not going to go into the land, but they're going to live a good long life. But the men who are wicked are going to be the first to be consumed. Is that what Yehovah is going to do in these last days? I think it is. I put, who wants to be next? There's more to come. There's plague coming now. 36. Then Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, tell Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, to pick up the censers out of the blaze, for they are holy, and scatter the fire some distance away. Did the consuming that came down from heaven probably melted the censers, turned the men to ashes? It says the censers of these men who sinned against their own souls. Sinned against their own souls. Don't sin against your own soul. Let them be made into hammered plates as a covering for the altar. Remember, the altar is a bronze altar. These are bronze censers. Because they have presented them before Yehovah, therefore they are holy. And they shall be a sign to Israel's seed. Every time we see that altar, well, we probably won't see the altar being covered, but we'll see the covering when we go into the tabernacle, I suppose. They'll remember. Be a sign to Israel's seed. So Eleazar the priest took the bronze censers, which those who were burned up had presented, and they were hammered out as a covering on the altar. So is this Eleazar that did this, or Eleazar who saw that it got done? I would say it probably is the latter. The censers, which were meant to be used by the priest to bring up a sweet aroma to Yehovah, were melted down and used to cover the altar that sends the sweet aroma to Yehovah. Oh, isn't that apropos? Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Instead of sending up the sweet aroma, it's what covers the altar that brings the sweet aroma to Yehovah. Amazing. To be a memorial to Israel's seed, that no outsider, can you guess what word that might be? Outsider? If you've been listening for a long time, I'll bet you can. Here's the word that we're talking about. Oh, no, that's not the word we're talking about. Here's the word we're talking about. No, that's not the word we're talking about. I guess I didn't get it. Let me just find it for you. I'm sure it's Zohar. This is not Zohar. This is Zikron. That has to do with remembering, a memorial, the Zikron. Aaron's seed, right here, who is not of Aaron's seed should come near to offer incense. So we're talking about from Aaron's Zerah. We're talking about men. We're not talking about ladies. We're talking about men. But I wanted to look up this word Zora, or Zor. I'm sure it's got to be the word Zor. Let's check it out. Seed. Stranger. Here it is. Zor. Zor. Remember, a Zor, I used to think of the Zor as the step that came when a man, remember we have a Ben Nakar, the son of the foreigner, who then hears the truth, and now he's a Toshab. He knows that Israel exists. He knows that there's another Elohim in the earth. The Toshab has to make a choice. He can either make a choice to become the Ger, leave the kingdom of his birth, or he can stay in the kingdom, which now becomes what was the act that we had today? Presumptuous sin. We call it the presumptuousness. Rebellion to Yehovah. We know the truth, but we're gonna simply not do it. That's what I always felt like the Zohar was. But there's more to that than rejecting Yehovah. A Zohar is more of an outsider. It's a man who's not a part of the group. For instance, the Levites, as we found out today, were trying to do something that the priests do. They're Zohar to the priesthood in that area. The priests, however, they get to come into the Mishkan, the residence of Yehovah, at least on the outer courts. They don't get to come into the inner courts. Israel's seed, then, is Zohar to them, because they don't just go in. That's why they are a buffer around the tabernacle, so that we protect Israel's seed, any other man, from just wandering up into a place where they don't belong. They're Zohar in that respect as well. And so we have to understand how Zohar actually fits in. These are people that just are not part of a specific group. To be a memorial to Israel's seed, that no outsider who is not a descendant of Aaron. So here we're talking about a descendant of Aaron. Remember, he's the one that touches, they're the ones that come before the altar, that can put things on the altar, can touch the altar. Levites can't do that. Can't bring incense before Yehovah. That's the priest's responsibility. That no outsider who is not a descendant of Aaron's seed, should come near to offer incense before Yehovah, that we might not that we might not become like Korah and his companions, just as Yehovah had said to him through Moses. Now look at this. This is after the 250 died. This is after Korah, Dathan, and Abiram's tents have been swallowed up. On the next day, all Israel's seeds assembly complained against Moses and Aaron, saying, "You have killed the people of Yehovah." When are they going to get it? What does it take? Are they blind? I put, hello? What's wrong with these men? When will they get the hint? All the assembly of Israel's seed murmured. You guys, don't murmur against Aaron and Moses. Now it happened when the assembly had gathered against Moses and Aaron that they turned toward the tent of meeting, and suddenly a cloud covered it. Here comes Yehovah. And the glory of Yehovah appeared. What is the glory? The smoke. It's the smoke. Yehovah is coming. The cloud and the glory are the same thing. Then Moses and Aaron came before the tent of meeting. Look at this. They're going to fall on their faces again because they realize these men are just out of it. And Yehovah spoke to Moses saying, "Get away from this assembly, that I might consume them in a moment." And they fell on their faces. Once again, these men are going to be destroyed. So Moses said to Aaron, "Take a censer and put fire in it from the altar." Where do you get the fire? From the altar. I don't know which altar. "Put incense on it and take it quickly to the assembly to make a covering for them." This is Moses saying to Aaron, make a covering for them, for the wrath has gone out from Yehovah. The plague has begun. How many people are going to die now? Remember, all of them are going to die eventually. But we're losing them left and right now, aren't we? 10. A bunch that went up to the mountain. 250 men. Korah, Dathan, and Abiram's tents. When is it going to end? 47. Then Aaron took it, as Moses commanded, and ran into the midst of the assembly. And already the plague had begun among the people. And he put the incense and made a covering for the people. Which people are we talking about? We're talking about men people. And he stood between the dead and the living. So the plague was stopped. If he kills women, he's going to tell you that he killed women. Told you when the tents died that the women and their sons died. Now, those who died in the plague were 14,700. Another 14,700 people died, besides those who died in the Korah incident. So Aaron returned to Moses at the door of the tent of meeting, for the plague had stopped. Oh my goodness. Are the people who come to us, Yehovah's Shalakim, in the last days, going to be as rebellious as these men are? I would say without a doubt, we're going to have to put up with the same nonsense. There's going to be good men that are going to come to us, but there's going to be a lot of men like these guys who are not going to come into the promised land. I would call it the millennial kingdom. They're not going to come. They're not going to make it through the fire, as Noah and his family made it through the flood. We're doing it on a grander scale now. Well, let's continue. 17. Talking about the rod of Aaron in this chapter. We're not done with this Korah incident because we still have to show that Aaron is the one that is elected by Yehovah. Let's find out. And Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, speak to Israel's seed and get from them a rod from each father's house. All their princes according to their father's houses, 12 rods. This is a rod from the man that's the head of each of the 12 tribes. Write each man's name on his rod, and you shall write Aaron's name on the rod of Levi. 12 rods. Remember, we've got an extra tribe right now because when Jacob adopted Ephraim and Manasseh as his own son, just as Reuben and Judah were his sons, we added an extra tribe. We got 12 tribes plus a tribe of Levi. Write each man's name on this rod, and you shall write Aaron's name on Levi's rod. For there shall be one rod for the head of each father's house. For the prince of each father's house. Well, I put, see the topic, rod of Elohim. I got a hunch, and follow me and see if you think I'm right. I thought, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is Aaron's rod, but I got a hunch that this is Moses' rod. This is the rod of Elohim. Here's what I put. The rod seems to be a symbol of authority. Yes, I think it is a symbol of authority. Was Aaron's rod the rod of Elohim? Was that the same rod that Moses had? I think it is. Let me point out some things that we've talked about concerning this rod. It says in Exodus 4, and you shall take this rod in your hand, with which you shall do the signs. Then Moses took his woman and his sons and set them on a donkey, and he returned to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the rod of Elohim in his hand. Remember, this is the rod that he got from Jethro's garden. He plucked it out and won the hand of Miriam, and also it was the sign of who the next, in a sense, the Melchizedek was. Up until then, we've had Melchizedek's priestly king, if you will. Then Pharaoh speaks to that. When Pharaoh speaks to you, saying, "Show a miracle for yourselves," then you shall say to Aaron, "Take your rod, cast it before Pharaoh, and let it become a serpent." Okay, Aaron's rod is the same rod that Yehovah at the burning bush gave to Moses that turned into a serpent. Do you see it's the same rod? For each man threw down his rod, and they became serpents before Aaron's rod. Aaron's rod is Moses' rod. Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods. 2 more verses. Then Yehovah spoke to Moses, "Say to Aaron, stretch out your hand with your rod over the streams, over the rivers, over the ponds, and cause," this is Aaron, speak to Moses. Then Yehovah spoke to Moses, say to Aaron. Yeah, say to Aaron. This is Aaron. He's taking that rod. "And cause the frogs to come up from the land of Egypt." And now, Numbers 20, we're not there yet, says, "Take the rod, you and your brother Aaron, gather the assembly together. Speak to the rock." He said, take the rod and speak to the rock. Where was the rod? Let's find out. "Before their eyes, and it will yield its water." Thus you shall bring water from them out of the rock, and give drink to the assembly and their animals. So Moses took the rod from before Yehovah as he commanded him. Moses took Aaron's rod, the rod of Elohim, from before Yehovah as he commanded him. So let's watch what happens to this rod. It says in 4, then you shall place them in the tabernacle of meeting, the tent of meeting. In the tent of meeting before the testimony. In the tent of meeting. These princes aren't going to bring the rods into the tent of meeting, but they're going to bring them into the tent of meeting. Then you shall place them in the tabernacle, in the, here, let's see what this is. Is this tabernacle or tent? In the, before the testimony's face. Before the testimony's face. Before the testimony. So in the tabernacle, before the testimony's face. The testimony's face is the same as Yehovah's face because he dwells there. And it shall be that the rod of the man whom I choose will blossom. Thus I will rid myself of the complaints of Israel's seed which they make against you. So Moses spoke to Israel's seed, and each of their princes gave him a rod apiece. For each prince, according to their father's house, 12 rods. And the rod of Aaron was among their rods. So we have 12, we have 13 rods altogether. And Moses placed the rods before Yehovah in the, now they're going to call it, what are they going to call it? And Moses placed the rods before Yehovah's face in the tabernacle of witness, in the testimony's tent. The testimony's tent. What's the testimony? The testimony is where the altar is, what's in the Ark of the Covenant. It's the tent of the ark where Yehovah dwells. Before Yehovah's face. We were just talking about before the face of before the testimony. Now it says before Yehovah's face. Same thing. Now it came to pass on the next day that Moses went into the tabernacle of witness. Still another name, in the testimony's tent. They call it the tabernacle's witness. How come they translate it as before the testimony? No. As before the tabernacle of witness, and now they call it I guess they are calling it the tabernacle of witness again. It's the testimony's tent. The testimony's tent. In the testimony's tent. Now it came to pass in the next day that Moses went in the testimony's tent. And behold, the rod of the house of Levi had sprouted and put forth buds, had produced blossoms, and yielded ripe almonds. Yehovah, isn't he funny? He not only blossoms, he brings forth the fruit. Any doubt, guys, who's in authority in the camp? Aaron. This is a short chapter. Then Moses brought out all the rods from before Yehovah to all Israel's seed, and they looked, and each man took his rod. Each man. There's no ladies there. And Yehovah said to Moses, they're in the tabernacle. Of course there's no ladies there. And Yehovah said to Moses, bring Aaron's rod before the testimony to be kept. So he brought it out. Now he's bringing it back in. Hear what's going on here? What happened to the rod? It's going back into the tent. And Yehovah said to Moses, bring Aaron's rod back before the testimony to be kept as a sign against the rebels, that you may put their complaints away from me, lest they die. So the rod is going back into the tabernacle before the testimony. Aduth, I think was the word that they used there. Thus Moses, just as Yehovah had commanded him, so he did. So Israel's seed spoke to Moses, saying, surely we die, we perish, we all perish. Wow. When are they getting it finally? I don't know. But nothing seems to happen. Whoever even comes near the tabernacle of Yehovah must die. Well, that's not true. Shall we all utterly die? Are they starting to get the idea? I don't know. I think they're going overboard now because they can still come into the tabernacle. They bring their korban, their oah, their kata'ah, their shalamim. They won't die, but they got to remember the boundaries. Don't be a Zor. Don't try to do things that the priests are going to do. Don't try to do as an Israelite. Don't try to do things that the Levites can do. Levites can't do what the priests are going to do. Everybody's got to know their boundaries. All right. Last chapter. Where are we at? 128. You know what? I think I'm going to stop here rather than start another chapter. This is kind of a long chapter. We'll do this next week. This is all about the Levites' portion. This is really good. And you know, when we understand what portion the Levites get, what portion the priests get, when we start to read Deuteronomy, we're going to see red flags come up. There are perversions in Deuteronomy, things that it says that just aren't so. We've got to learn what does it say here? We'll see at 19. I hope that you'll be here again. There's a lot for us to learn. We've got to learn the nuances of the word. You know, we are an ignorant crowd. I was an ignorant crowd. I'm still ignorant in a lot of ways. But I see things that a lot of people don't see. You can't paint with a broad stroke. This is what these 250 men did. This is what these 14,000 men did who were plagued by Yehovah. Presumptuousness, thinking that they understand something that they don't. We've got to learn how Yehovah wants things done. And that is going to keep us safe. It would have kept us safe then. It's going to keep us safe in the last days. You know, when those rebellious men come to us, before we go into the millennial kingdom, before Yehovah, what does he say? Fire, he's going to send fire on the earth, that even the elect would be destroyed if it wasn't for Yehovah. There's a time coming where we're going to have one last Yom Kippurim. Yehovah's going to search the heart of every man. Will or does he serve Yehovah from the heart? Or is it just, what should I say, a front? Yehovah is looking for seed to fill the whole earth. And he's not going to take a people just because they're a people. He's going to do it because they are going to serve him with all their heart. Those are the kinds of men that we're looking for. Those are the kinds of men that are going to go with his sent ones, his shalakim, into the new kingdom. Oh, Father, I want to be one of those men. Please let me be with one of those men if I can't be one of those men. But let it happen during my lifetime, please. Well, I hope it does. Come, Yehovah, come. Raise up your people. Maybe this is the Passover that he's going to raise up his people. Could it be? It's growing every year. More and more Ezra men are being birthed every Passover. Will this be the one that he has enough to do it. Well, next week is Passover. This week is Passover. This week. Well, this is the end of the week, but next Wednesday. Probably we won't see pillars of fire and smoke until Shavuot. That's when I would expect to see pillars of fire and smoke again. We'll see. Well, until then, until next week, have a good Passover. Thank you for joining me today. I love you tons. Bye now.